So Russell T Davies confirmed that there is yet to be a third member of the Unholy Trinity, stating that the two Ranis only count as one member, with Conrad being the second. So in today's video, I want to go through all the possible candidates for who could be the third member of this Unholy Trinity. I've got a couple of different ideas that I want to cover and kind of talk to you guys about. Some of which I've seen be talked about, some of which I haven't seen be talked about yet. So subscribe if you're new, that would be greatly appreciated. We are trying to get to 30,000 subscribers and we just passed 27,100. Thank you all so much for the support on the channel. It's been really humbling over these last couple of weeks. But let's dive right into it. Candidate number 1, Omega. This is the one that I think I've seen the most speculation about. Omega has basically been one of the characters that has been theorised to be coming back for ages, particularly if you confuse Adipose, who has been dreaming of an Omega return for years. In this case, however, it does make a lot of sense. Russell does directly mention the Pantheon, and whilst Omega is related to the Time Lords, he is also often credited as the God of Time, as essentially in the Virgin New Adventures, he was the one that gifted the Time Lords the ability of time travel. And of course, in this story, it does seem like timelines are blending and converging. Obviously, we have a lot of 1950s technology. We have the countdown specifically to midnight and a big focus on, a giant clock in the center of the base, which seems to be inside one of the bone beasts of the two Ranis. So, there's definitely some time stuff going on here. Russell also says that the third is lying in wait 160 years away, and obviously that would make sense if Omega is able to time travel. He was also banished to an antimatter dimension by the Time Lords, and obviously we know that part of this story takes place in somewhere called the Underverse, so could that be the new place where Omega is holed up? I think it's definitely a possibility for sure. This is probably the most common one that I've seen speculated, and I think there's been some rumours about it as well. So this is probably where my money's going. I think that Omega makes the most logical sense, because he kind of straddles that line of being part of the Doctor Who God mythology, but also being part of Time Lord mythology as well. And I think it would make sense if Time Lords do seem to be making a comeback, which they do seem to be, obviously with the Rani and Susan seemingly being alive, that Omega, the God of Time, would be the ultimate final entity in the Trinity. Candidate number 2, Missy, or the Master. This one is a little bit more kind of out there, but go with me on this. Michelle Gomez was one of the people at the Season 2 premiere, alongside Jo Martin, who of course made her return in Story in the Engine. Previously as well, of course, Carol Ann Ford has attended these premieres as well, who has also now made a return to the show. So it stands to reason that it's not entirely impossible for Missy to be another member of this Unholy Trinity. Last we saw Missy, however, she was shot in the back by herself, the Saxon Master, and we never really saw how her regeneration played out. It has been implied in the canon that Sacha Dhawan's Master comes after Missy, which a lot of fans don't like because they feel like it regresses the Master as a character. However, could this be a deliberate part of Russell T Davies' plan? Because it's noteworthy that the two Ranis didn't just regenerate, they bigenerated, therefore creating two separate personalities. A more traditional, evil Rani, and a more sympathetic, nice old lady Rani. You see where I'm going with this? What if the Master, at the end of All the Time Doctor Falls, bigenerated, one of them being the Sacha Dhawan Master who we go and see fight the Whittaker Doctor, and the other being Missy, who then comes to be a part of this sort of wish world thing for whatever reason. As for what her motivations would be for this, my kind of thinking is, if this is kind of an ideal world, obviously I highly doubt that she would be happy with Gallifrey being gone again, so she may well be teaming up with the two Ranis in order to reinstate Gallifrey. That's something that the Master has wanted to do before, even going back to End of Time and stuff as well, so that would make sense. Admittedly, I don't think she'd be as hostile towards the Doctor as the Rani seems to be, but Ncuti Gatwa did say that one of the villains he wants to face was either the Master or Missy. And I have to admit, seeing the Rani and Missy on screen together would be very funny, especially considering Missy was rumoured to be the Rani all the way back in Series 8 before we found out that she was the Master. I guess the only thing that doesn't really quite work about this theory is, where does it tie into the whole Pantheon stuff? I guess 160 years away, I don't know when exactly the space station that she dies in is meant to be. She could have escaped somehow. I'm not exactly sure how, but it's a fun theory nonetheless. Someone pointed out that maybe it was an earlier version of the Rani who did pick up the Toymaker's tooth containing the Master. Although, to be fair, the Toymaker is fairly vague about which version of the Master he played a game with, so it could be Missy in there. It would be fun seeing Michelle Gomez again, for sure. And I actually wouldn't hate the idea of them revealing that the reason why the two Masters are so different is because it was a Bigeneration. That might actually fix a bit of an ongoing problem with the Master's character, and you know, why they went back to their old ways after Missy, because they bigenerated, creating two separate personalities. I actually quite like that. Candidate number 3, the Trickster. Part of me, I think, just wants this one on the list because I really want it to be the Trickster. Obviously, I've said a number of times now, the Trickster, I absolutely adore him. He was one of my favourite villains in the Sarah Jane Adventures, and there is some logic to him being in this finale. For one thing, he is not only a Pantheon member, but one of the founding members of the Pantheon. His whole gimmick was also about, you know, making deals with people in order to give them what they want, but in turn getting something for himself. And obviously in Wishworld, it seems like Conrad is being given the opportunity to lead Earth as its overlord and kind of, you know, enact his will upon the people of the Earth. But of course, naturally, like with all the Trickster's deals, that could come at a cost. The difficulty with this one is that I don't necessarily know what would be in it for the two Ranis to team up with the Trickster. Maybe, like I said, in this agreement, part of it is that Gallifrey is reinstated in this alternate reality, and that as long as nothing goes wrong by midnight, then this reality becomes the permanent new reality, kind of like what we were seeing with Whatever Happened to Sarah Jane Smith, and maybe Susan's projections onto the Doctor are her trying to break into this timeline in a similar way to what the Doctor was trying to do in The Wedding of Sarah Jane Smith. But I think at this point, I just want to see the Trickster come back, and I don't actually think it's him. It would be cool, though. Candidate number 4 is a bit of an off one, but go with me on it. Candidate number 4 would actually be Susan herself. Now, when I say Susan herself, I don't actually mean the Susan that we come to know and love. I actually mean that in the promo images for Wishworld, we see the Rani holding a baby. And the theory goes that what if that baby grows up to be Susan, and Rani goes back in time to basically interfere with Susan's upbringing and basically make her evil. Sort of like what we saw with River Song in Series 6, where Madame Kavarian raised her to be the Doctor's killer. Similar to that, but obviously with Susan this time, which would probably hit the Doctor even harder, to be honest. The idea of going back in time to change his granddaughter into hating him would be a fascinating and truly evil plan. And I mean, Russell does say that it's her most terrifying experiment yet. And I can't think of something more terrifying than the idea of bringing Susan back just to make her evil. 160 years away also sort of makes sense when you consider that the last time we saw Susan, she was in 2160 AD roughly. And obviously, you know, we haven't seen her for a very long time, so the timelines don't exactly match up, but it's logical to assume that she could still be on planet Earth around that time. Except, rather than being, you know, dotingly waiting for the Doctor or wanting to see him again, instead, the timeline's been corrupted, and she now hates him. This would also explain why Russell put 2 hearts plus a baby emoji in his post as well. But let me know what you guys think about my theories. Who do you think the third member of the Unholy Trinity is? If I had to put my money on anyone, I think it's Omega. I think it's time. I think it makes sense given what we know, you know, the sort of time manipulation, him being in a separate universe, him teaming up with the two Ranis, obviously all of which are Time Lords. I think it just makes sense. I think it just tracks. Especially with the tales that Conrad is telling about the young Doctor and Rani, of course. Omega, being one of the founding members of Gallifrey, will probably have the knowledge more so of them as children. So I do think that kind of makes sense. But what are your guys' thoughts? Let me know down in the comments below. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you later.